This video is a long-form, deep dive review of episode 2 of season 2 of The Wheel of Time, Strangers and Friends. Coming to hang out with us on Dragonmount. Huge shout out to Tor Books, who is our sponsor and helps us keep the lights on here, but also all of our Patreon supporters and all of you who are watching and interacting with this video. If you're enjoying this content, let us know by subscribing on YouTube, following us on Twitch, which are both free and brings us steps closer of our affiliate programs with each platform, which opens up new and different ways for us to interact with you guys. On YouTube, after certain levels, we get different ways to stream and the ability to host certain types of events over others. And on Twitch, it's also very similar. We're starting to fill our Patreon with new content right now. You can find the full videos of the interviews our new CEO, Kathy Campbell, recently got to do with the cast and crew of The Wheel of Time. Those interviews were filmed before the SAG-AFTRA WGA strike. The edited versions you can find on our YouTube page, links below, but the full reviews are for Patreons only. We'll have a lot more content to come as we've just started revamping that Patreon site, but even $1 can help us get new technology and upgrade server space, things like that. Okay, now on to the episode. Okay, immediately we have Rand in his ramshackle building. Still 100% convinced it's the Foregate, but we'll see. As I watch this, I'm having thoughts, pausing the episode, talking to you guys, going back to watching the episode. He's having a dream where he kills all of his friends, and he sees who we are 9,000% certain is a Shamiel, laughing at him. Now, this harkens back to the earlier storylines from Book 1 of Balsamon disrupting the Emmonsfielders' dreams in the hopes of scaring them into making mistakes, or scaring them away from what he fears will be them completing their destinies and winning for the side of the light. Then in enters Celine, who seems to be the proprietor of the inn that they're in. Beautiful kimono house, blue and white, silver, beautiful house kimono pajama dress that she's wearing. That is a beautiful shade of blue and silver or white filigree in it. There's moons all over these shots. See how many you could pick out. Let me know in the comments below. So obviously this is Lanfear here, right? And which we know from episode 1, at least, unless there's a time jump backwards or forwards into episode 2. For episode 1, it's somewhere between 5 and 6 months since the end of season 1. And in this episode, she says this month or months. So it's been some time since he's been here. And he's obviously having a relationship of the sexual variety with this woman, Lanfear, in exchange for staying in the inn. Immediately after that, when Celine walks away, Rand seems to hear some voices there. Now, we know that a lot of the men who can channel hear voices. We don't know if they're going to make madness all the same, and it's basically you hear voices, but for sure there's some whisperings. It sounds similar to the prior ones that we've heard, and it definitely says kill, and it sounds like it says them. Sadly, for the screeners, I cannot put on subtitles to see, but we'll be able to tell for sure once it comes out. Maybe it says kill them. Maybe it says kill her. Is it Lews Therin? Is it madness? Waffo. Okay, so Rand entering the city of Kyrian from the Foregate we know now as to the words on the screen, but also the topless towers. So it seems like he provided almost like a license or a pass to the guard to be allowed into the city at all. He opened up a piece of paper, and what looked like maybe a large circular wax seal or something like that was on the paper. I didn't see any writing. And the guard, motioned him in. There seemed to be some familiarity to that too. Rand obviously was just like, hey, okay. And Not sure what that's hearkening to, but like, I get maybe organized crime or nepotism or maybe authoritarian-y, a little bit more of a strict government than what we have in Andor or even what we saw in the book version of Kyrian. Not sure here. Beautiful set, though. Streets look great. I love the lighting, the cobblestones, the way the buildings are built right on top of each other. Gorgeous. Rand goes into a building. Oh, wait. And also, I don't think there's anything to this. Call me crazy, but Rand's jacket is this muddy brown mixed in with these different color threads. And my immediate thought was threads of the One Power, Sidene. There's different colors, all the different colors of the threads. And the muddy brown jacket, the taint on Sidene. That was just my feeling. I think I'm reading way too deep into it. I'm way too in the tall grass at this point. We're only going to go downhill from here, folks. I'm sorry. But let me know what you think on that. Am I crazy? But let me know what you think of that. Do I belong in the sanitarium where Rand apparently works? So yeah, Rand goes into what seems to be a sanitarium where he's working and walks down a hallway that is extremely familiar from the season 2 previews that we saw, which is also around another scene with the Amyrlin seat, but also I'm getting a strong feeling here that Logain is going to be in here instead of at the White Tower. Like, this is a sanitarium for, people that need care in that way, and Logain is one of those people. We hear Rand hearing those whispers again, except this time it seems less like the madness voice and more like an outside voice speaking in. Maybe he's remembering the dream or something like that, but it's, "Do you hear me? You are mine, Rand al'Thor." So, very interesting. Is it the Dark One? Is it the Taint? Is it Balsamon or Shamael from his dream? Something else entirely? I don't know. What do y'all think? All right, our next bit here is back to Chateau Veron, if you will. Back to Chateau Veron. Maureen Lan looking very sickly, or probably looking very sickly at first, but then we hear Veron say tired from the healing. So still no mention of Myrddraal blades being horrible or anything like that. So unsure if they're going to include that at all, or if maybe they weren't worried about it because they had healing. So still unclear on that. Also, another thought that I had that I completely forgot to mention in my episode 1 review that I'm going to mention now because I can do whatever I want. Moiraine says to Biodomin, "The Sea Folk might be good at the game, but the Aes Sedai invented it." So, the Sea Folk exist. One of the big questions that we've been asking over the last few years, even before Season 1 came out, but especially after Season 1 came out with absolutely no mention of them, will the Sea Folk be in this adaptation? Now, we know they have to cut stuff, and they're probably going to have to cut a lot of big stuff or change a lot of big stuff to fit everything and to make it more condensed and less likely to confuse people who haven't read the books. So the Sea Folk were up on the chopping block as a possibility because they're a large portion of the story, and they would be easier to cut than others, and could greatly shorten the overall story. But here they are, Sea Folk. We don't know if we're going to see them. Are they a myth from legend? Who knows? But at least here we are, reference to the Sea Folk. They exist, or have existed. Okay, so the rest of that scene is Veron telling Moiraine and Lan that her and her sister and Thomas are going to be accompanying them to the White Tower. And when Lan offers to saddle Moiraine's horse, Moiraine pretty much just says, "No, I don't want a chance at slipping. Like, you can't do the job that you should be doing as my warder." Still trying to push him away. And so returns our adventuring party. Some more playful banter from Uno, this time targeted toward Elias. Elias seems to not like to ride horses, which wolves really don't like to, so makes sense. The first thing that I want to point out is Elias says they crossed here while standing next to a river. Now, as we all know from the books, but also especially from season 1, Trollocs don't like crossing water. So I mean, if you recall that scene, I remember vividly hundreds of Trollocs bunched up against the shore on the docks with a Mergel standing in its front, and they wouldn't cross the water. The difference between the two groups here, Pat and Fane. So my immediate reaction is Pat and Fane is somehow able to make the Trollocs cross water and Mergel cross water, which, since the only way they listen to you and like do things that are out of the norm like that is if they're actually terrified of you. Which brings us to who we think is Hot Zima, but I haven't gotten a confirmation on that yet. Saying that, you know, they ran out of here fast. They must have been afraid of something. It wasn't us. Maybe Pat and Fane like went nuts and fucking made them leave and scared them into leaving. And in comes Dordral, the lovely Dordral that we saw in the promotional materials a while back. Great scene in the books. I hope there's a recall to this with Pat and Fane at some point when he like has a memory of doing it and insane stuff ensues. Like, I think that would be cool. So again, really cool visual effects and visual representation of the Wolf Brothers' new sniffer powers. Much better than someone just going, smells like violence, you know, like, while that's okay in the book and still interesting, if someone were to do that on screen, like, you'd be like, oh, wow. Like, what, they couldn't afford anything for this or whatever, but this is much better. Also, like I said last time, way less confusing than having this weird random power that only one person has and it's never really explained or talked about. So this way, more clear and concise, able to cut something out. Also, Elias seems really intent on Perrin. I mean, obviously he's fully aware of what's going on, but how aware and for how long? Did he know about this like prior or whatever? Like, we'll see. Okay. I feel like this is also a hot take, but I really love this. Like, I love, I feel like I'd watch an entire series just about Rand working in the sanitarium with who I think is Herod Fell. I replayed that scene a whole bunch with the volume way up and my headphones on, trying to make sure I heard it right. It's definitely like at the beginning, but I can't tell if it's Harold is unlikely, but Harold or Harrol it sounds like, or Harrol it sounds like, but it's probably Herod Fell. This is probably Herod Fell. Now, I want to caution everybody in saying things like crazy or insane or things like that, because he's not. He is obviously someone with post-traumatic stress. He is a soldier from the Aiel War who has post-traumatic stress, PTSD. Okay? So let's be respectful of people in the real world who have things like that. He's also an old man, very smart, and most importantly, a blade master. So this is probably where Rand's been getting most of his training, which I hope gets fleshed out later with some Lan training montages. He obviously thinks Rand is an Aielman. So now, number 2 person completely convinced he's an Aielman. And just the way they go back and forth is just so cute and so fun. And it really also displays Rand's like selfless, heroic, softer side in caring for this man. Obviously, he has some ulterior motive here. Probably to see Logain, who's in the gardens with where the more famous people are, and douchebag gets to work. But completely unnecessary, like not involved in his plan, you know, other than, you know, it's his day-to-day job. He is taking care of this man and going out of his way to do so and help him feel as mentally healthy as possible. What I'm hoping we see here is, as in the book, Herod Fell is a lot like this. Like he's described as doddering and, you know, all over the place and, you know, different ways of describing someone who is a little off kilter. You know, maybe the cheese slipped off the cracker a little bit. But in this way, it's a real reason. Like there's a real world traumatic reason that lends to the story of the character. He could still be a genius. Maybe later in the series, when Rand returns to Cairhien, he finds Fell and adopts him again and helps him acclimate back into life. Maybe there's some healing involved. But I like this. It sets up a possibility for a return. It builds a relationship, and it's interesting. And honestly, I know I said it a couple times, but just kind of cute and fun. The only other bit I want to talk about is we got sword forms. I think this is the first reference to true sword forms like they are in the book here. So parting the silk, an oldie but a goodie, and reaping the barley. Off the top of my head, I can't remember that one exactly, but it probably is in the books. If it's not, great addition. I love the sound of it. The way Robert Jordan used them in the books was so that he didn't have to describe angles of swords and blocks and stuff like that. He was able to just use these poetic representations for motions that would like evoke visions in all of our minds. They're probably different to everybody, but we would all get the idea of what they are. Reaping the silk gives you a distinct visual representation. And reaping the silk gives me a distinct visual representation in my head. So like, in fact, I would really like to know, what do all of you see when you hear parting the silk and reaping the barley? So like visually, if it was a sword form in your mind, what does parting the silk look like? And what does reaping the barley look like? I'm interested to know what you guys think about that. Okay, and then we swoop right back into the White Tower. So let me start off with, I was wrong about Breakbone Fever. So maybe a couple weeks ago. So back when we were doing our Season 2 speculation rewatch videos, back when we were doing our Season 2 speculation rewatch videos back in July and most of August of 2023, I presented the theory that they may use Breakbone Fever as what happens to women, like, or men too, maybe, that are born with the spark and aren't taught to channel, so they die. Like, instead of it just being a disease. But here we are. Nope, Breakbone Fever is a disease. I can accept when I'm wrong. A lot of people, actually, probably all the people in chat said I was wrong, but I was. So here we are. Anyway, it's confusing why Liandrin would bring Nynaeve to view the healing, since it really seems like she wants her to be a red. But maybe it's just to confuse her, which is possible because she's a fucking black, and we know that because she lies. And she lied last episode. So also to point out, the accepted bands being on the wrists looks great, makes sense. For the TV show purposes, like, obviously the majority of characters we see are going to be from, like, you know, it at the deepest probably mid thigh up, but generally waist up shots for dialogue and stuff like that. So to be able to tell who's accepted and who's not on screen, the bands on the wrist just make sense. And, you know, it's really no change. Like, it does nothing to move them from the hem of the dress to the wrist. So it's perfectly fine. And it looked cool. The conversation they have as they're walking through the market, Liandrin seems like a pretty decent teacher. You know what I mean? Like, she is doing it. Liandrin seems like a decent teacher, or at the very least a wonderful manipulator, because she's really drawing Nynaeve in here. But then also saying the exact wrong thing by calling men who can channel a disease. Nynaeve's initial reaction is to say they're not because of Rand, but the idea of bringing the taint on Saidin to Nynaeve as a disease and something to be healed, I think is great to start that groundwork here, if that's their plan. I think Rafe's a crunchy enough nerd, and Sarah Nakamura obviously is. She is the resident book expert after all. So, you know, like, the Reds version of curing a disease is burning it away, kind of like the, you know, Dark Ages Catholic Church version of, you know, curing diseases. And Nynaeve's is the more methodical, is the more scientific. We'll use herbs and healing and and we will fix the disease. We will cure it. You want to burn it away? I want to cure it. And I think that those two ideals are, if they're, you know, alluding to what may happen later, well placed. Then we're like, what? Liandrin has a sweet tooth? Wouldn't have pegged a black for that. Resist the joke. Okay. Now we have Matt back in his cell, no longer upset and crying that his friends don't love him. Tasting the way he tastes the honey cake. I'm seeing Matt now. I'm starting to see Matt. And then, oh man, perfectly executed, like this, the way he, you know, makes the hand motions with the thing, all perfectly lined up, and her walking away, you know, like, so it's funny. It's really funny, but also it shows this, like, methodically strategizing nature of Matt, which we know Matt has that in him. So, like, he's probably counted the steps and knows exactly what it sounds like and how close she is and how much time he has to hide the hole he's trying to chisel on the wall, apparently. Shoves a honey cake in his mouth and goes right to work. So as soon as I saw these bags, I was like, Her Royal Highness is watching luggage. If anyone gets that quote, let me know in the comments below. I'll do it one more time. Her Royal Highness is not luggage. Just imagine ears going like that. Anyway. Lion, lots of red and a lion head. Here we have Elaine Draken, daughter heir of Andor. Sira Kovini so far, great. Liking it. Obviously, she's this is going to be an older portrayal of Elaine, so maybe a little bit more wizened. She seems to really feel at home in her place where she is here, where, viewing herself with some status. She's obviously made herself at home by making these rooms look like the royal quarters in the palace at Camelin, but when she goes into a Egwene's room and immediately refers to her stuff as rubbish, at first I was like, they're going to make her like a rich, pompous person. But then she really displayed a genuine feel of hurt and distress for having offended and been so rude to Egwene, and she immediately tries to make up for it. It could have been put on, but it really did feel like that it was genuine, that Sira meant for the character to genuinely feel that way. So I'm going to err on the side of caution and say she seems like she's going to be a good person, while older, still out of place and unlearned on how to function as a normal person without the trappings of royalty. So pretty cool. Noticeably, though, no mention of siblings. So let's keep track of that. So I don't think anyone should be, but I'm totally unsurprised that Alana seems to have a hookah bar in her room. Totally unsurprised. So we have Sheriam here, Ivan and Maxim, her two warders. They're all lounging on their little pillows, and Sheriam very properly sitting in her chair drinking. So they're discussing the goings-ons here. We have Nynaeve, the strongest channeler in 1,000 years. Egwene's very strong, but she pales in comparison to Nynaeve. So Nynaeve very strong. They talk about Elaine, the daughter heir. And her strength is significant as well. And then other odd occurrences that are happening as indicators of the pattern being in flux and possibly Tarman Gaiden coming. We hear mention of Sheriam's warder, Aranvar, which is the same name as her warder from the books. And I also like how Alana is including her warders in this, because having them aware of a lot of the stuff that's going on will enable them to do their job better. I think. I'm sure sometimes the need to compartmentalize comes up, but it's not needed here. So from the books, Sheriam is a black too. Now, the way she's talking about Liandrin and the interactions we've seen with them so far, not sure if they're aware each other are, or if Sheriam really is, which still goes along with the book canon and the idea that, not even the Black sisters know who each other are for the most part. She references Liandrin's cabal as wanting to put Nynaeve up for the accepted test. Now, this could be because she genuinely thinks she'll pass it, and she wants to get at her to control her to get her through the accepted test, or she wants her to go in there because she thinks she's going to die, and then they'll be taking a powerful weapon away from the forces of light. It could be one or the other or both. If one works, I'll do that. If the other one works, oh well. Which is totally within the calculating nature of a Black Aja sister. They reference the number 3 here, so Liandrin has 3 in her little secret clique here, and Alana only represents 1, so they won't be able to sway the vote in the tower to put Alana into the accepted test. Now, Alana then talks about Maureen needing them, and that's why they have to leave. So how did she know Maureen needs her? Is there some way they're communicating other than writing letters back and forth? I mean, we didn't see a letter go in and out for sure or anything. I mean, it could have easily, or it could have easily. So I don't know. Maybe they have some other form of communication better than Perrin's USPS, with actual airplanes and things. So we start off in the White Tower again. Beautiful architecture, really just lovely. I can't help but say it every time we see new parts of the tower. It really is awesome looking. When Nynaeve was walking down those steps in the secret door, I immediately was like, oh, here's the dungeon. Nope, which just leads outside, which is still pretty cool. A secret exit to the tower. Awesome. Harkens me to a certain series of a horrible turf about magicians and schools that I'm not going to mention. But it's still interesting. Nynaeve runs into that other novice carrying Leandrin's laundry with all red dresses, at least that I could see in there. So I'm thinking we can pretty much confirm that the Aes Sedai seem to pretty much always wear their color Aja in their clothing. It could just be the Reds, because we know the Reds are known for that, but at least this is furthering that so far. I mean, and also the appearances of all the other Aes Sedai so far at the tower. Perrin and the gang coming into a fishing village. So we have them butchering up a lionfish, which is a fish mentioned often in the books. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty positive the lionfish lurks in the shoals along the shore of oceans. So like that means this fishing village must be pretty close to an ocean here. So, I mean, we know from the promotional materials that at least this village resembles the one that this group meets the Seanchan in. So if that's true, things are progressing pretty quickly. Now, that was a hotly contested topic of the pacing of season 1. And again, as we mentioned before, and I really feel like from what I've seen of all of episode 1 and about halfway through episode 2, is that even though the pacing is pretty quick here, like if we're going to meet the Seanchan in this episode, then that's pretty fast. It's faster than I thought. But it doesn't feel rushed. Where episodes 1, 2, and 3, but definitely 1 and 2, felt incredibly rushed. Now, I attributed that to COVID nonsense, Barney leaving, re-edits, reshoots, stuff like that. And it seems that was and it seems that might have been a correct assumption, because this is much better so far. Even though it's fast, it doesn't feel rushed. So, yeah, I'm liking it so far. Then we get back to Varen and Moiraine. They're on their way to the White Tower. 3 Fades hunting the Aes Sedai. You didn't think I would figure it out. Blah, blah, blah. Dragon Reborn. Moiraine's like, hey, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you with this dagger. And she seemed ready to do it. So, obviously, this brings into question again her willingness to kill her without being threatened. Oaths being gone, but also technically the dagger isn't the one power, which is what the oath is, not to use the power. So I think they're doing a good job of making me at least unsure of whether she's severed or just shielded. I'm unsure, and I like that. I really like that I'm unsure. It's not definitive. I can't honestly say with any definitive thought that it's one way or the other, and I'm really happy with that. And then we hear mention of some prophecies. I'm pretty sure it's the first time, other than when Rand is reading a copy of the Carethian Cycle when they're in Tar Valon in season 1. We have prophecies that mention Tommen Head, a battle in the sky, a flaming sword, and a branded hand. So all of these things are from the books. All of these things are pretty specific for major plot lines, either throughout the entire series or in the Great Hunt. So interesting. I can't wait to see if those are, the more prophetic things that don't end up being what we think, or maybe we are going to get a battle in the sky. And I hope they explain how the fuck that works, because in the book, it was unclear. So we're back in the Foregate, and in the books, there's some scenes with giant puppets that played Forerunner to Trollocs attacking. So I had that fear for a second, but nope. Just the Mega Douche getting some comeuppance. I thought for a second Rand might have killed him, but you could see him twitching after Rand moves away from the body. So yeah, I mean, he could die afterwards of his injuries, but I feel like they would have showed us that on screen. It would have been impactful to the character and for us. So yeah, I think he's just, I think they just beat the crap out of him. I think he just beat the crap out of him. He might come back and Rand kills him later, but yeah, alive at the end of that, in my opinion. So Rand comes back vulnerable, upset, And here we have Leandrin capitalizing on that immediately and manipulating Rand into having sex with her. And the sex starts off seeming pretty violent, resembling like the fight that we just saw. So yeah, it's a little rough there. To each their own. Don't want to I don't want to kink shame, but in this case, knowing knowing who Lanfear is, it's a little disconcerting at the least for Rand. With Eggy here and Elaine, there's a lot of breaths of fresh air. So, one, Elaine really isn't a pompous ass. Like, she's not a rich, pompous person. She displays a deep ethical sense of responsibility to protect those who are under her, the people who she serves as their daughter heir or have done things for her in her name that is of no fault of their own. Sheriam threatens to punish the woman that helped her bring the luggage in, and Elaine puts herself right in front of that, accepting the punishment. And the punishment, if it was in the books, would have been spanking probably on the bottom, but here, switches on the shoulders. So perfect. Not perfect. Capital punishment is bad, but at least it's not, all the spanking in the book. So yeah, there we go. Again, not to kink shame or anything, but the way it's used in the books is a little, so I like this here. I'm sure we'll get spanking references at some point. It's impossible for Rafe to not at least slip one in there. Get it? Spanking, slip one in. All right, I'll stop. All right, okay, so here's the man in the man in the docks, I think, that Maureen mentions in season 1 or whatever, that Leandrin goes to see, and we have the sneaky Leandrin scene. Not Patton Fane's wagon. I really was hoping it was, but she's going to see an elderly son. So crazy. He looks like he could be anywhere from like 65 to like 80, 85, maybe even older if she's been like healing him with the one power to keep him alive. Nynaeve finds them there. There's a discussion of herbs and the sickness and how Leandrin seems to genuinely think that what she's doing is at least helping him ease the pain so that she can keep him alive purely for her own benefit. But when Nynaeve tells her how wrong she is, and then she probably thinks about how long he's been there in pain and she didn't know, she gets upset. Nynaeve doesn't look like she's angry. She looks like she understands, probably having dealt with stuff like that a lot as a doctor or wisdom in the Two Rivers, and she leaves. Ultimately, I think this scene is going to be a pivotal moment in Nynaeve's decision to take the yellow, because right here is just the perfect example of how the Reds do not know how to fix, cure, or understand disease. So here's a, top-ranking Red, no idea what she's doing with the herbs that she's using or what she's trying to accomplish with them. So yeah, going to push Nynaeve right into the yellow. I also feel that, this could have been like a manipulation on Leandrin's part, but I don't think it is. It seemed genuine. Like, Leandrin did not want Nynaeve to follow her there to discover this. And I don't think it's a manipulation thing. That was just a thought that crossed my mind, but yeah, no, definitely not. So back to Matt again. He's pulling a Andy Dufresne, but poorly. He tunnels his way into another cell, which is occupied by men. So that's interesting. How long has she been there? Why is she there? And I guess we know where she was going when she left. And I guess we know where she was going when she left Faldara, and that's Tar-Valon. But what remains to be decided here is, I had that kind of idea that Min was in that garden scene, the garden Aes Sedai powwow in episode 1. So if that was her totally not in a prison cell, why is she in one now? So I don't know. We'll see. And then classic Matt, being, jokester, going back and forth, the way they traded, the way they had like a little tete-a-tete, like back and forth, exchange was fun. Snarky Min is like, early book Min / way later book Min. So really cool. I like it. This back and forth with them. Also, she's beautiful. Donald Flynn's great looking, but she's beautiful. Stunning. Okay. tell me if I'm wrong, but is anyone else getting Golden Girls vibes from Annalise, Varen, and Maureen? Because this, like, campfire scene, totally Golden Girls. It's, what would you call it? Like, the campfire stories, Golden Girls of the White Tower. I don't know, but totally Golden Girls vibes. I loved it. And then, you know, obviously, especially since we got the meeting story for Maureen and Lan from New Spring, just great. It's always been one of my favorites, especially because, you know, we got New Spring so much later in the series when we had this well-established vision of Maureen being like this stalwart, very regal, powerful woman, and you know, then visually Lan tossing her into a, you know, Lan tossing her into the lake, and like the pranks and the innocence and playful nature that she had in New Spring, which was burned out of her pretty quick with the later events of that book. But yeah, Golden Girls, White Tower. Yeah, let's make that happen. Someone cut together a video with the Golden Girls theme and them, because totally, absolutely, totally. Well, I'm sold on Donald Flynn as Matt. Yep. Not that he's any better than Barney, because I really loved Barney as well. But like I've said before, Barney's representation of the character always felt just a little too dark for me, even in episode 1, where Donald here, even though you could see there's the trauma and pain there, kind of the way he sits and holds himself sometimes in this scene, but he's much more brighter and jovial, and he seems more comfortable than Barney did in, like, you know, scenes like when he was flirting with Dana and stuff like that. It just, this feels more like the Matt that I envisioned in my head, so I'm liking it. And like I said, not that one's better than the other, but yeah, this cemented Donald as Matt for me right here, or at least early Matt. We'll see how he does afterwards. Okay, this divergence of the way Min's abilities work here, you know, seeing the pattern, seeing the future, and not seeing the floating images, she actually sees visual manifestations of scenes playing out, not images floating around. So, like, here we have Matt stabbing Rand in the stomach with the dagger from Shatter Logoth. So, I'm hoping it's not the future. What we haven't heard her say is that all her visions come true, so that's a move in the right direction. But I don't think I like the change here. I always enjoyed trying to figure out what the symbols meant, and, you know, that's kind of taken away here. So, like, I feel like that would have been a better thing to do for the audience, especially the non-book audience, to be like, oh, these symbols, what could they mean? And, like, discovering them as we watch more of the show, and going back and rewatching and seeing the symbols from in earlier episodes before we even met Min and stuff like that could have been, like, a really cool thing to have done, and would be so in the veins of the books with the infinite rereads and finding new stuff. But yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, we still have more to see, so it could play out and change, and, you know, maybe it's a little different or something. But so far, not a huge fan of the I See the Future Min so far. You'll help me remember, and I'll help you forget. Fantastic line. Also, Natasha O'Keeffe. I thought she was incredibly beautiful and had amazing screen presence in Peaky Blinders, but never mind. Lanfear, totally sold. Signdane, yep. Also, the finality in which she said, like, when Rand was like, I don't want to hurt you, and she said, you can't. Like, it wasn't, like, gentle. It had a bite to it that made me have a little shiver in my spine area. Just a little bit. So here comes Nynaeve's accepted test. Of course, it's right after she's dropping some eaves on Elaine and Egwene, and overhears part of Egwene talking about how she feels currently about Nynaeve. It upsets her. She leaves. Hopefully in the accepted test, she's not turned into anything unnatural. So we have Leandrin, Liane, and Sheriam to take 9 even for her accepted test. The words they're speaking are very similar to the one in the books. There's a few alterations, but for the most part, they're all there. So we have the arches for the accepted test here. Now, these are a relic left over from even maybe before the Age of Legends. And the Aes Sedai don't really understand their original intended use, but they use it to test accepted to see, well, they use it to test novices to see if they're ready to become accepted. So, yeah. So yeah, the door is beautiful. I like that. The arches themselves, one seems to be broken, which is interesting that, you know, they still use it. But yeah, again, also awesome scroll work all over it. Looks really cool. And the rest of that room is also interesting. So I get like Stonehenge vibes, like maybe they built the tower on top of this site and it was there before they built the White Tower. That's kind of like the vibes I get here. But there's also like the architecture of that room is very naturally formed cave looking, but there's these statues I can't quite make out yet, like along the wall. They look like humanoid statues. So I'm going to hope for better shots soon. So Lan stealing this note is a little silly to me because I'm like, does he think she's not going to notice? Like, I don't know. It's or it could have just been like, oh, what do I do with it? Maureen's coming. But still. So we get confirmation here. Lan says he could not sense the fades, though he should have been with his through his warder bond. So like he's again, here I go. The bond is definitely broken. She's severed. But then less than a minute later, Maureen says that wait, what did she say? That I'll have Alana take your bond by force. So like take your bond by force. Either that was like just a mistake in the way they worded it, or they want to continue confusing me and keeping me on my toes, which I like. I'm still enjoying this back and forth in my brain, and I totally don't have a headache trying to decide which I want/like more. But yeah, no, I like that it's keeping me on my toes. And then okay, so then we also have Lan mentioning how it takes 8 Aes Sedai to cut someone off from the 1 power. Is this instead of or in addition to there being like, 13 Aes Sedai to turn someone to the shadow? Like, we never hear any mention of this, like, ever, really. Like, taking 8 Aes Sedai to do anything, let alone cut people off from the 1 power. It could just be the idea that most of the people that are cut off from 1 power are men, and maybe just through tradition they used 8, and now it's become so ingrained that they believe they need to. Maybe, I don't know. What do you guys think? Maybe, I don't know. What do y'all think? Why is it significant? Is it a hard and fast rule? Is it just a misunderstood tradition? Aes Sedai nonsense? What's up? The other thing I want to call attention to here is Maureen's surety that the Forsaken that they released was Ishamael. How does she know that? Like, so given she could be easily, she could just have evidence that we as viewers aren't aware of yet. But I haven't seen anything yet that could possibly have tipped her off to know that that person is Ishamael. Like, there are other male Forsaken in the show, for sure. We don't know what their names are yet, but they're there. So, the fuck. And then, my theory holds water. She says, the Quendiar that we broke at the eye was a seal on the Dark One's prison. So, yes. I mean, obviously, it could be unreliable. Obviously, it could be the unreliable narrator here, and Maureen is just wrong. I'm going to err on the side that I'm right here, because who doesn't like being right at least once? And that the Eye of the World is one physical location, which is a seal in the Dark One's prison, and just so happens there to be a Forsaken there as well. And that there are other identical locations spaced around Sheol Ghul in some sort of like geometrical pattern that helps Lews Therin used to seal the bore. So like, they positioned the seals around and then did the thing. So like, I like that better than there just being dinner plates that they carry around. And yeah, I don't know. Since Robert Jordan didn't really have the one power system fleshed out when he had that, I understand it not really jiving with the rules of the one power throughout the rest of the series, but I like this one better. Also, fun fact, but also in Michael Livingston's Origins of the Wheel of Time, Michael wrote that in early drafts and in Robert Jordan's notes, Robert Jordan specifically had that theory as well, which I have the receipts. If you go back and check my videos, I have at least 2 videos where I present that theory way before this book comes out. So I'm going to hold on to that because I like this theory. Anyway, then by the end of this scene, Maureen successfully pushes Lan away here. Like, she's been working on it all throughout episode 1 and this episode, and here she succeeds, pushes him right away. We were never equals. You're not my warder. You failed. Alphabet soup of triggering points for Lan Mandragoran to make him not want to forgive Maureen here. Oh man, this Shanshan battle is fantastic. The choreography, the music, the sound, awesome. I love the way Uno and Ingtar fight in unison here. The idea that they've done this many times is evident there. It's really cool. Throwing each other around stuff, awesome. But you know who steals the entire scene here? My boy Loyal. He is tossing motherfuckers around. I probably shouldn't curse. He is tossing folks around like they're nothing. Oh my god. Like, don't get me wrong, I really loved the first time we really see Loyal like let loose and have it described and have it described really detailed is at Lord Algamar's estate when, Ryzax's the Trollocs are coming, and way later in the series. But like, not to say he doesn't fight earlier, but like really waylay and let loose. Wow. That was awesome. I cannot wait to see. I'm hoping we see Death Watch guards, but honestly, I think if they had like a group of well-trained, militarized Ogier, the Shanshan would just win based off of what we saw here. Oh man, that was so incredible. Yeah, and then we get the scene that we got and then we get the scene of the Shanshan coming in, Lady Suroth, her voice, and Fairs as Ishamael. So is Suroth aware that he's a Forsaken or Dark Friend? I mean, she's probably the Shanshan from the Dark Friend social, but, I'll wait till I have actual confirmation of that. Could be somebody else, maybe, red herring. Also, a little fun fact, the woman who plays Suroth's voice is Guy Roberts' girlfriend in real life, obviously. That's pretty cool. Okay, and that wraps up episode 2. All right, and that wraps episode 2. So thanks for joining me here on Dragonmount today, where we did this in-depth review of episode 2. Make sure to look for the Too Long Didn't Read version, book spoiler free, that you could share with your non-book reader friends who don't like to be spoiled. And let me know what you think of this review and my hot takes in the Too Long Didn't Read version. And don't worry, yes, I learned what a hot take is, because apparently I was not educated on that definition last year. Okay, and thanks for joining me, and may you always find water and shade until the next time we see each other on the slopes of Dragonmount. Peace.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for sticking around to the end. As always, please subscribe to our channel and click the thumbs up button, or leave a comment. We like comments, especially positive ones. If you have a friend who enjoys the Wheel of Time, tell them about Dragonmount.com and our show. Special thanks to our show sponsor, Tor Books, as well as to our Patreon supporters. If you want to learn more about how our show is made and get additional insights into Wheel of Time, you can become a Patreon supporter. We have a lot of big plans for the show, and your contribution will go a long way to making them a reality. Be sure to follow Dragonmount on social media, and see you next time!